The Millionaire's 6-year-old twins didn't speak until the new cleaning lady arrived and did what no nanny had ever done. Before we begin, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. You're hired, but you must not get involved with my children beyond what's necessary. Your job here is to clean, nothing else. Those words still echoed in Ruby Gonzalez's mind as she scrubbed the living room floor with a mop that looked like it had survived a medieval battle. She paused for a moment, glanced at her reflection in the marble, adjusted her hot pink jumpsuit, looking like the Pink Panther, and slid on her knees as if she were surfing. "Wow, 3 points for Ruby in artistic cleaning," she said, lifting the mop like a trophy. Ruby began humming softly, inventing her own tune. "Dirt go away. Stress be gone. I came to shake up this floor," but she didn't know she was being watched. At the door, 2 little eyes peeked out in silence. Ollie and Liam, 6 years old, identical twins, quiet, serious, stuck in time since the day they lost their mother. Ruby's song grew more lively. She spun dramatically with the mop, bumped the bucket by accident, and sent a rag flying like a dove of peace, landing right on the face of a marble bust. "Oops. Sorry, Mr. Statue. Hope you don't sue." And then it happened. A giggle, then another. Soft, shy but real. Ruby stopped, looked at the door. Nobody. Am I hearing little ghosts, or did this house finally find something funny? Upstairs in his office, Edward. Everything on the cameras. The dance, the choreographed disaster, the unplanned mess, and the smiles. The smiles he hadn't seen in 2 years. One corner of his mouth twitched slowly. And then, against all odds, he laughed. Quiet, brief, but enough to startle himself. The next day, Ruby showed up earlier, this time with a new accessory, a tape measure hanging around her neck. Nobody knew if it was part of her costume, or if she thought she could measure the negative energy in the house. She ran into the twins in the hallway. She stopped, smiled. "Good morning, gentlemen of silence. Today we have a cleaning special. If you give me a smile, I'll sing Baby Shark samba style." They didn't answer. They just stared. Ruby kept going. In the middle of cleaning, she felt something strange. She looked back. Ollie was standing in the doorway and she heard a sound. Low, rough but clear, almost like a hi. Ruby's eyes widened. "Hey, hi," he repeated. She pointed at herself. "Me? The housekeeper?" "Ruby, you said hi?" He nodded, then laughed and ran off as if he had just stolen treasure. Liam followed right after, laughing too. Ruby just stood there holding them up like a magic scepter, smiling faintly, knowingly, and whispered, "Hi to you two little ones." Edward never said a word about what he saw on the cameras, but something in his routine began to change. For the first time in 2 years, he started leaving the office earlier, always with the same excuse: "I need to check on things at home." The truth was, he wanted to see Ruby in action. And Ruby, well, Ruby had turned cleaning into a real show. That Tuesday morning, she arrived humming a song she seemed to have made up on the way. "Dust be gone. Dirt goodbye. Today this house will shine. Oh yeah, oh yeah." She grabbed the vacuum cleaner and began dancing with it like it was her ballroom partner. She slid down the hall, spun around, and giving the appliance a name. "Today you'll discover every corner of this mansion." From upstairs, Edward watched on the monitor, shaking his head, but with an involuntary smile on his lips. Ruby had no idea she was being the living room sofa, completely fascinated by the woman who turned work into fun. When Ruby got close to the toys scattered on the floor, she stopped, looked around as if plotting something. She murmured, picking up a red fire truck. "Looks like we have an emergency here." She gave each toy a different voice. "Help! Help!" she cried, in a tiny voice for a doll. "The dust is attacking the city." "Don't worry, citizens," she answered in a deep voice, holding the truck. "The cleaning brigade is here to save the day." Ruby made up a "That's when it happened." A laugh, clear, loud, genuine. Then another one. Ruby stopped in the middle of her play acting and looked around. This time she saw them. Ollie and Liam were there, smiling. openly, their eyes shining with joy. "Did you like the story?" she asked slowly, stepping closer. Liam nodded. Shyly, Ollie took a step forward with a slight grin. Without realizing it, Ruby knelt on the floor and opened her arms. To her surprise, both boys ran straight toward her. From the office, Edward watched with a tight chest. Anger and gratitude battled inside him. Ruby had disobeyed his direct orders not to get involved with the children, but for the first time in 2 years his sons were happy. He was torn between going down to scold her or letting that magic continue. The decision was made for him when the housekeeper, who had worked there for 15 years, knocked on his office door. "Mr. Royce, I need to speak with you," she said, walking in with a stern expression. "What is it, Margaret?" "It's about the new employee." Edward frowned. "Ruby, Mrs. Thompson, the boy's nanny, came to me this morning. She's very worried." "Worried about what?" Margaret sighed clearly. "Uncomfortable. Sir Ruby is constantly interacting with the children. Not only during her work hours, she comes early, stays late, and well, she's making quite a mess around the house." Edward kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt his irritation rising. "Go on." "Mrs. Thompson said that yesterday Ruby turned the living room into, how did she put it, a toy theater. There were toys scattered everywhere. She was singing loudly, making noise." Margaret paused. "Sir, that's not proper behavior for a respectable home." Edward was silent for a long moment. He looked at the monitor, where Ruby was still playing with his sons and the boys. How did they react? Margaret seemed surprised by the question. "Well, they seemed to enjoy it, sir, but that's not the point. A cleaning lady should not behave like that, especially not with the children of the house." Edward kept watching the screen. He saw Ollie trying to copy Ruby's dance moves. He saw Liam laughing at something she said. He saw life where there had only been silence. "Thank you for letting me know, Margaret," he finally said. "I'll handle the situation." When Margaret left, Edward was alone with his conflicting thoughts. Ruby had disobeyed him. She had created chaos in his perfectly organized home, but she had given his children something he thought was lost forever: smiles. 3 days later, Ruby was in the middle of her morning routine when something caught her eye. In the corner of the main room, there was something mysterious covered by a white sheet, as if it had been forgotten by time. What could be under there? She murmured, walking closer with curiosity. Ruby gently pulled the edge of the fabric and uncovered a magnificent grand piano. The ivory keys gleamed even under the layer of dust, and the dark wood had a finish that spoke of elegance and care. "Wow, you're..." Ruby sat on the padded bench and placed her hands on the keys. She played a few simple chords, testing the sound. The piano answered with a sweet, melancholy melody that echoed through the room like a long-held sigh. "You have such a lovely..." 15T were a knife piercing his chest. He dropped the papers he was reading and rushed down the stairs 2 at a time, his face growing paler with each step. When he reached the room, Ruby was still playing, completely absorbed in the music. Her eyes were closed, a small smile on her lips as if she were. Silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. Edward stood at the entrance, breathing hard, his fists clenched, his face a mask of fury and pain. "Mr. Royce, I didn't know that," Ruby began, quickly getting to her feet. "You didn't know what? That you're not supposed to touch the things in this house? That there are rules here?" His voice shook with restrained anger. "I was only cleaning and saw the piano. I'm sorry I didn't. No one touches that piano," Edward exploded, striding forward with firm steps. "No one. Do you understand?" Ruby stepped back instinctively, but her expression shifted from confusion to something more determined. "I understand that you're angry, but I don't understand why. Just a piano." "Just a piano?" Edward let out a bitter laugh. "That piano was hers. My wife's. No one has touched it since she died." The silence that followed was different, heavier, filled with the pain. Ruby could almost reach out and touch. "Mr. Royce, I didn't know." I'm truly sorry, she said, her voice softer. Your apology doesn't change the fact that you disrespected this house again. Edward pointed at her. First with my children, and now with this. Fine. You're right about the piano. But about your children? Ruby crossed her arms. You saw them laugh for the first time in years. And you still think that was a bad thing? That's none of your business, isn't it? Then tell me why you keep watching through the cameras when I'm with them. Ruby stepped closer. You spy on us because you know something good is happening. Edward opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Your children are alive, Mr. Royce. They just need someone to remind them of that. Ruby went on. And if you fire me for making them smile, maybe the problem isn't me. How dare you? How dare I? What? Speak the truth. Ruby didn't back down. You've been so busy protecting your pain that you forgot to protect their happiness. Edward stayed silent, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on her. And about the piano? Ruby looked at the instrument and then back at him. I really am sorry. I didn't know the story, but can I tell you something? Edward didn't answer, but he didn't walk away either. Things only die when we stop thinking about them, she said simply. Music doesn't die, Mr. Royce. It only waits for someone to wake it up. Edward stood still for what felt, covered the piano again with the sheet, and went back to work. But something in the air of the house had shifted. For the rest of the day, Ruby noticed the twins sticking closer to her. They followed her through the hallways, no longer hiding but openly curious. Do you want to help, Aunt Ruby? She asked, holding two little cloths. Ollie grabbed one and tried to copy her movements. Liam did the same, but so clumsily that Ruby burst out laughing. Very good cleaning crew. Now let's create our magic words. She began inventing silly words. When the dirt is stubborn, we shout, Zoombalumba cha, Zoombalumba cha. The boys repeated, laughing. And when the vacuum chokes, we say, Pyripate coffee, Pyripate coffee. They yelped between giggles. And when we finish everything, we celebrate with Babaloo Chubaloo, Babaloo Chubaloo. The twins jumped, delighted by the ridiculous sound. Ruby had turned cleaning into a magic word game, and the boys were completely enchanted. From his office, Edward heard the laughter echoing through the house. Each sound was like a distant memory of when those walls still knew joy. He tried to focus on his reports, but the words on the screen blurred. His hands trembled slightly. That night, after Ruby had left and the boys were asleep, Edward went downstairs. The house was silent, only the ticking of the living room clock breaking the stillness. He stopped in front of the covered piano. Slowly he pulled off the sheet. The keys glistened under the soft lamp light. Edward sat on the bench, his hands hovering uncertainly over the keyboard. He played one note, then another. Little by little, his fingers found a familiar melody, his wife's favorite, the one she used to play on Sunday mornings while the coffee boiled in the kitchen. Edward played carefully, as if the keys were made of glass. Each chord carried a memory. Her smile when she caught him listening from the doorway. The way she swayed her head to the rhythm. How she hummed softly under her breath. Silent tears rolled down his face. For the first time in 2 years, Edward Royce wasn't just remembering his wife. He was honoring her memory. And from the top of the stairs, two small figures watched in silence. Ollie and Liam had come down for water and found their father playing the piano. They glanced at each other and without making a sound went back to their rooms. The next morning when Ruby arrived, she was greeted by two cheerful voices. Zoombalumba cha, Aunt Ruby. Babaloo Chubaloo. She laughed out loud, pulled them both into a tight hug and whispered, Today we're going to invent even sillier words. And for the first time since she had arrived at that house, Ruby felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. Even though her boss still watched her with that complicated look she could never quite figure out. Even though she knew she was walking on dangerous ground. The next morning, Ruby came in with her usual good spirits. But when she entered the twins' room for the daily cleaning, she found a scene that made her stop immediately. Ollie and Liam were lying on the bed, holding on to each other, their Faces sad, so different from the joy of the past few days. Their little faces were turned toward the window, as if waiting for something that would never come. "Hey, dynamic duo," Ruby said, softly as she walked in. "What's going on? You two look like little birds without a nest." The boys looked at her, but didn't move. Ruby felt her heart tighten. "Can I sit here with you?" she asked, pointing to the edge of the bed. Ollie nodded and Ruby lay down between them, staring at the ceiling. "You know, when I was little and felt sad, my grandma would tell me silly stories to cheer me up. Do you want to hear one?" Liam turned toward her, curious. "Once upon a time," Ruby began in a dramatic voice, "there were 3 terrible monsters that terrorized an entire city. The first was the messy hair monster with huge teeth and sharp claws." The boys leaned in closer. "The second was the cold soup monster who spit out ice and froze everything. And the third," she paused for effect, "was the stinky sock monster, who had the most terrible power of all." "What power?" Ollie asked, forgetting his sadness. "He could make people faint, just by taking off his shoes." Ruby pretended to faint dramatically. The twins burst out laughing. "But one day," she continued, "a heroine showed up. Smelly Sock Girl. She had a special superpower. Her socks were so smelly that even the monsters were afraid of her." "How's that?" Liam asked, laughing. "She got close to the monsters, took off her shoes." Ruby pretended to pull off invisible socks, and they screamed, "Oh, no, what a horrible smell. Let's get out of here." And they ran far, far away. The boys laughed so hard their bellies hurt. Ruby went on with the story, using funny voices for each character, exaggerated gestures and silly sounds. That completely erased the twins' sadness. From the doorway, Edward watched. He had come downstairs to get a report and heard the laughter. Seeing Ruby lying on the bed with his sons, telling absurd stories that made them laugh from the heart, he felt something strange in his chest, an impulse to walk in to join. That moment of pure happiness. He took a step forward but stopped. That wasn't his place. That magic belonged to Ruby and the children. He went back to his office, but the image stayed fixed in his mind. 15 minutes later, Mrs. Thompson, the twins' official nanny, walked into the room and found the scene. Ruby still lying on the bed. Thebois nestled in her arms, all of them laughing over a story about the dragon who was afraid of popcorn. "What's going on here?" the nanny asked in a stern voice. Ruby quickly got up, smoothing down her jumpsuit. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson. I was just cleaning the room and the boy seemed sad. Though that's not your job." The nanny cut in, crossing her arms. "You were hired to clean, not to play nanny." "I know, but they look so down and I just wanted." "You just wanted what? To step over my responsibilities?" Mrs. Thompson moved closer. "This is the 3rd time this week I found you where you shouldn't be." Ruby felt irritation rising. "Look, Mrs. Thompson, I respect your work, but how many times have I seen these boys alone and sad while you were on the phone or reading a magazine? How dare you accuse me?" "I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, they need a little more attention." Ruby kept her tone firm, but respectful. "I just want to make them happy. Making them happy is not your job. You're a housekeeper and you're a nanny who seems to have forgotten how to care for children." Mrs. Thompson's face turned red with anger. "We'll see what Mr. Royce thinks about this," she snapped, leaving the room with heavy steps. Ruby sighed, looked at the twins who had watched everything with wide eyes. "I'm sorry you had to see that, boys. Ruby just wants you happy, okay?" They nodded and ran to hug her. In the office, Mrs. Thompson knocked loudly on the door. "Mr. Royce, I need to speak with you right away." "Come in," Edward said without lifting his eyes from the papers. "Sir, I can't take it anymore. That woman is completely out of control." The nanny gestured nervously. "Today I found her lying on the bed with the children." "Lying down, Mr. Royce." Edward looked up. "And what else?" "She disrespected me, questioned my work, said I don't take proper care of the boys." Mrs. Thompson's humiliation. Edward was silent for a moment. Mrs. Thompson, do you want me to fire Ruby? Yes, immediately or I will resign. I can't work under these conditions. Edward sighed. All right, stay here. I'll take care of this now. He went downstairs and found Ruby in the twins' room tidying up toys while humming softly. The boys were helping, handing her the objects. Ruby, he said from the doorway. She turned, already expecting trouble. Yes, Mr. Royce. I've asked you several times not to get involved with my children. You don't listen. Mr. Royce, I can explain. You're fired, he said flatly. Silence fell in the room like a bomb. Ruby felt her legs weaken, but she held on to her dignity. I understand, she said, her voice trembling. I'll gather my things. At that moment, Ollie and Liam, who had been listening from the bathroom door, rushed into the room. No, Ollie shouted, clinging to Ruby's right leg. Ruby. Stays, said Liam, holding on tightly to her left leg. Edward froze. His sons, who had barely spoken for 2 years, were now speaking clearly to defend the housemaid. Ruby is good, Ollie said, looking at his father with tears in his eyes. Daddy, Ruby stays. Liam begged. Ruby knelt down and hugged them both. It's all right, my loves. Your daddy knows what's best. Edward looked at the scene, his children crying, holding on to the woman who had brought light back into their lives. The woman he was firing for following strict rules that perhaps no longer made sense. Without a word, he went back to his office. Mrs. Thompson was waiting, smiling in triumph. So, sir, has she left already? Edward looked straight at her. Mrs. Thompson, I've changed my mind. Ruby will not be fired. The nanny smile vanished. What do you mean, sir? We had an agreement. The agreement was that I would handle the situation, and I did. Ruby stays. But sir, this is unacceptable. Either she goes or I go. Edward sighed. Then Mrs. Thompson, I accept your resignation. Margaret will take care of your final payment. The nanny's jaw dropped. Mr. Royce, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Have a good day. Half an hour later, Edward found Ruby in the kitchen, teaching the twins how to arrange the utensils by size. Ruby, he called. She turned clearly nervous. Mr. Royce, I was already getting ready to leave. From now on, you can also take care of the children, he interrupted. I'll pay you 3 times more for your work. You'll still be responsible for the cleaning, but the priority will be the boys. Ruby's eyes widened. Really? You're sure? I am. But on one condition, never touch the piano again without permission. Promise, she said, smiling. The twins jumped with joy, hugging Ruby's legs again. The next day, Ruby had a brilliant idea. Mr. Royce, she said, appearing at the office door. How about helping us with the special cleaning today? What do you mean? The boys want their daddy to join our magical cleaning team. Edward looked at his sons, who were standing behind Ruby, making pleading faces. Daddy, come on, Ollie said. It's fun, Liam added. Against all his corporate instincts, Edward gave in. The cleaning operation turned into real comic chaos. Edward, wearing casual clothes for the first time in years, tried to follow Ruby's instructions, but everything went wrong. He spilled the bucket of water 3 times, slipped on the soap, got tangled in the vacuum hose, and almost brought down a bookshelf when he tried to steady himself. Daddy is silly, Liam shouted, laughing. Edward felt tears well up. He was overwhelmed with emotion, seeing his children talking and happy after so long. Ruby watched the scene with a little smile. Edward couldn't quite read. There was something in her eyes, a tenderness mixed with quiet satisfaction, as if she knew this was only the beginning of something much greater. The following afternoon, Ruby appeared at Edward's office with a proposal he never expected to hear. Mr. Royce, how about having dinner with your children tonight? Edward looked up from his reports, frowning. We always have dinner together in the dining room at 7 sharp. No. Ruby shook her head, smiling. I'm talking about a real dinner. In the kitchen. No Margaret serving, no porcelain plates, no starched napkins. Just you 3 and me, if you'll allow it. Ruby, we have a protocol. Protocols are for business meetings. Not for families, she gently interrupted. When was the last time you actually talked with Ollie and Liam during a meal? Edward opened his mouth to answer, but realized he couldn't remember. Meals were always silent, formal, the boys eating politely while he checked emails. On his phone. Let's make tacos, Ruby said excitedly. The boys will love it. It's fun, messy, and everyone takes part. Tacos. Edward sounded as if he just heard a word in a foreign language. Simple tortillas, meat, cheese, veggies, sauce. Everyone builds their own however they want. It's like an edible puzzle. Ollie and Liam appeared at the office door as if summoned by telepathy. Papa, let's make tacos, Ollie said, jumping. With melted cheese, Liam added. Edward looked at the three hopeful faces in front of him and felt his resistance crumble. All right, he sighed. But let's keep things civilized. Ruby laughed. Mr. Royce. Tacos end up civilized, then we've done something wrong. An hour later, the mansion's kitchen had turned into a culinary battlefield. Edward, who had traded his suit for a casual shirt and jeans thanks to Ruby's insistence, stood at the stove trying to brown the ground beef under the shouted instructions of 3 different teachers. More seasoning, Ruby called out. Dad, don't let it burn, Ollie warned. Stir, stir. Stir, Liam sang, clapping his hands. I know what I'm doing, Edward muttered, clearly not knowing what he was doing. Meanwhile, Ruby and the twins worked on the toppings. Or at least tried. Ollie, no. The cheese goes in the bowl, not on your brother. Ruby laughed, stopping a grated cheese war. But he started it. Ollie protested. Crumbs of cheese stuck in his hair. I didn't do anything. Liam defended himself, clearly guilty. Ruby grabbed a handful of cheese and tossed it in the air, letting it fall over her own head. There, now we're all the same. Problem solved. The boys burst out laughing, and Edward, who had turned to see what was happening, couldn't help but smile. The meat's burning, Liam warned, pointing to the stove. Oh no. Edward rushed back, but in his haste slipped on a piece of lettuce that had fallen on the floor. His arms flailed every direction. Watch out, Ruby shouted, diving to save the salsa, but bumped into Edward instead. The two ended up in a clumsy dance, trying not to step on the tomatoes scattered across the floor. Ruby clutching the salsa jar like it was a baby, Edward still holding the spatula. It's raining tomatoes, Ollie cheered. It's a food storm, Liam added. Ruby and Edward looked at each other covered in flour, cheese, and tomatoes and began to laugh. First softly, then louder until they were laughing like mischievous teenagers. Dad looks like a flour ghost, Liam said. And Ruby looks like a walking cheese, Ollie added. That only made them laugh harder. 40 minutes later, they finally managed to gather enough ingredients to make tacos. The kitchen looked as if a food hurricane had hit it. Flour on the walls, cheese on the ceiling, lettuce stuck to the fridge, and a mysterious salsa footprint on the tile. But nobody cared. Sitting around the kitchen island on tall stools, each one built their taco with the creativity of an artist. Edward discovered he liked extra cheese and pickles. Ollie created a masterpiece with 5 different sauces. Liam decided tortillas work better as hats before eating them. Papa, tell us about your childhood, Ollie asked, chewing. My childhood? Edward seemed surprised. Why do you want to know? Ruby told us that when she was little, she lived with her grandma, who made pancakes shaped like animals, Liam said. What about you? Edward thought for a moment. It had been so long since he'd spoken about his childhood. Well, my grandfather used to teach me to fish every summer. We always went to Cedar Lake, and he said the secret was to have patience and talk to the fish. Talk to the fish? Ollie's eyes widened. That's right. He said if he told funny stories, they'd get curious and come see what was going on. And did it work? Liam asked, fascinated. Sometimes, Edward. Ruby stayed quiet, watching Edward transform in front of his children. His words flowed naturally. His gestures were more relaxed, and there was a light in his eyes she had never seen before. Ruby, tell us more about the pancake. Grandma? Ollie asked. Grandma Carmen was an artist, Ruby said with Dramatic gestures. She made elephant pancakes, giraffe pancakes, even dragon pancakes. And she always said, Mia, food made with love tastes different. Mia? Liam asked, confused. That's what she called me. It means my daughter in Spanish, Ruby explained. She was Mexican. She came to the United States when she was young. Like you, Edward observed. Ruby blinked, a little surprised by his comment. Yes, like me. Second generation of dreamers. They kept talking while finishing their tacos. The stories flowed easily. Ruby shared about